Hey, how's it going, everybody? Yeah. Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Greg Brown from Foundry, and welcome to today's Modo live stream. Today we have an excellent presentation from April Brady at VEC Workshop, talking about how they used Modo for animations that are actually done for Homeland Security. And so it's one of those situations where you hear more broadly how 3D software is used. And Jesse has put together a phenomenal presentation for us, about 20 minutes long. So after this intro, we'll hop right into it and see what Jesse has to say. And then we'll have a Q&A session afterwards. So as questions come up as you're watching the video, please go ahead and pop them into the chat, and we will be addressing them right after his presentation is done playing. So a few quick things. First off, happy Alien Day. Many people don't know it's Alien Day. It is Alien Day. I'm a huge Alien fan and a huge Ridley Scott fan, and it has been 45 years since Alien came out, which makes me very uncomfortable. I did not see it in the theater, so that at least for me is comforting. But it's been 45 years since the movie Alien came out, and actually, there's a lot of theaters around, at least the U.S. and probably around the U.K. as well, where Alien is being shown in theaters. So I'm going to be taking advantage of that this weekend, and I highly suggest you should too. Jesse just told me he didn't see it till he was 30, and it's like one of those, like, how'd you go that long? But he said he liked it when he saw it when he was 30, which those movies you appreciate from your youth, watching them as adults, they rarely hold up. Alien is one of those movies that truly holds up. Yeah. So anyhow, next up, updates as far as Modo is concerned. You will be seeing V5 dropping soon. It has been in alpha and public beta now for a little while. And so we're hoping to have that out to you, out of beta next week. And so continuing this effort that we are committed to for this year of continuing to deliver updates that improve stability, improve your experience consistently. So looking forward to getting that in your hands. And after we're done with the Q&A session with Jesse, I've got a few things I'm going to share with you guys about 17.1. A couple little previews of things that we've been working on that I think are super exciting. But again, they are alpha demos and alpha presentations. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to Jesse's fantastic presentation, and we'll be back to talk to you guys at the Q&A session. See you in a bit.
Hey everyone, April Brady here. I'm an owner with my wife April at VEC Workshop, and I'm also the main animator. I started using Modo around 2013 or 14 with 801, and right away the tools clicked with me. At the time, I was working at a publishing company making educational animations for high school science, and I had the privilege of creating my first videos using Strata 3D. Any Strata fans in the house? It was a bit rough. We really pushed that software to its limits. Strata's main claim to fame is that it was used to create Myst, the computer game. And in 2012, that was just a bit tougher to get excited about. So when we upgraded our 3D tools, we grabbed Modo. So from the beginning, I've really focused on using Modo to create animation. Most of the time using After Effects I/O Kit to seamlessly blend 2D and 3D content together. So each time a new version added a tool that was even remotely animation related, I try to incorporate it right away. Mesh ops, arrays, gradient nodes. I love the way that it feels to create and kind of construct animation systems in Modo, and I'm excited to see where they go next. I'm really happy that they're focusing on performance. So I left that publisher in 2021 to start my own animation production company with my wife April, who's our art director. We've always done a lot of motion graphics, and right away I realized that I could render out my 3D shapes using this super simplified flat color, and it would totally blend in with April's vector art. So we started doing a lot more of that. And 2023 was our biggest year for 3D videos, with board game promos, shopping channel videos, and a bunch of other stuff. But by far our biggest undertaking was the animation that will be the focus of today's video, the Department of Homeland Security's Blue Campaign Trafficking Awareness Series. So the project was contracted to us by one of our favorite and longest running clients, Cameron Pierce, over at Crosstier Media. He's the producer, and he supported us throughout the process, so shout out to Cameron for trusting us with this one. This was a 10-month project that really tested every skill that we have, and Modo played a pivotal role in making it happen. It was actually not our first rodeo with DHS. We had previously done a 5-part series about a girl who gets caught up in a trafficking situation, and it follows her journey through the process of getting help. It was nearly all 2D, and with April creating the character art and the backgrounds in Illustrator, and me animating in Toon Boom Harmony and After Effects. The entire time we were working on the project, though, I was wondering how it would look if we integrated the 2D characters into fully realized 3D scenes. You can see glimmers of that vision in those videos, especially in this one scene where we switched over to kind of a motion graphics feel for part of it. So we were scrolling the backgrounds, we were trying to achieve these turnarounds and dynamic camera moves, and all the while I was wishing that we'd had the time and the resources to use Modo instead. In 2023, we got that chance. 2 new videos were ordered with new characters, a new story, and we immediately planned our production around the creation of 3D scenes. This demo is going to focus on the challenges that we had to overcome to get our detailed 2D 360 rigs to feel at home in a 3D world. So first, the video featured video games, and here at VEC Workshop we have a strict policy. If a client leaves the door open to include a super cool robot animation, we'll always take it. And this scene was my idea. It was non-negotiable, and with that out of the way, the real first order of business was creating the main setting, an upper middle class house with a game room. And this video was going to focus on trafficking situations that can arise online, so we also created a computer room for the bad guy as well. We actually hired some of this work out to some of the talented members of the Modo community, so shout out to Ricky Sharnek and Kimo Hellstrom for doing great work. I created this gray block-in of the house layout according to our specifications, what we needed, and handed this rough file over to the others to finish. I actually made a video to help recruit collaborators, and I think it actually explains all of this really well, so I'm just going to play it here.
Hi guys, I'm looking for someone to help us develop a finished 3D scene using this rough house layout. We're going to need a final product to match a very specific highly stylized look, so the ideal collaborator will have some experience in that area. This scene will be the main setting for several animated videos that exist as a continuation of this existing series. The previous videos mainly used layered Adobe Illustrator art for the backgrounds, but this time around we're looking to expand our look with a 3D scene that we can either use to quickly render out stills for any background we need, or use an animated camera for more dynamic shots. The characters are designed with a pretty flat vector look, and the backgrounds also have that feel. The look development is already complete, so we're not looking to make any drastic changes. The main character will spend most of his time in this computer/gaming room, and the rest of the house shots will take place in this living room and this kitchen. This is where you come in, so we need someone to turn these room interiors into an attractive scene suitable for immediate use in the animation. That will involve filling out the scene with additional props and items, kind of elaborating on the items that are already there, and using materials and shaders to match the look of our previous work. Several posters in this gaming room and other stylized elements to bring the backgrounds to life would be great too. We did some testing and had a hard time getting Modo's cell shader to return results that looked, that kind of matched the very simplistic shading well, while also looking clean enough to use with a moving camera. Some other promising techniques involved using diffuse color gradients with locator incidents set in the rough locations of the light sources, but any technique will work as long as we can get the look that matches what we're after. I can elaborate a bit more when kicking off the project, but this is the gist of it, and we'd love to work with someone who's already confident they can get us a working Modo scene that matches these requirements. So if that's you, reach out to us.
As a side note, the gray block-in was actually super helpful in the early stages of client approvals. They were really excited to see the character art mock-ups sitting in 3D space. We got to give the producer a tour of the house, and I think at that point everything started to click visually for them. We had a really smooth process getting things approved. We worked really closely with both of our collaborators on nailing the stylized shaders too. Like I mentioned, we tried some Toon shaders and the NPR kit, but none of the tests that we were doing really gave us that super clean, minimal vector look. And we kept getting too much detail and too much variation as the camera moved around. There was really this middle ground that we were shooting for. So we ended up simplifying down to only a diffuse render output and using diffuse color gradients in the material that were tied to slope angle or locator positions to step through a couple of color values depending on the surface angle. The end result was something that fit really nicely alongside the flat vector art, In this part, I'll give you guys a breakdown of the plan, including everything that we had to account for when building these 3D scenes that were intended to gel together seamlessly with our 2D elements, particularly those 360 rigs that were coming out of Toon Boom. We didn't make it easy on ourselves because we planned for some pretty ambitious camera work as well. So after that, I'll also take you through an actual scene so I can show you what we had to do to pull off a convincing integration of the character animation with this workflow. Right off the bat, we were planning to block in all of our camera animation and positional character movement inside Modo. The idea was to use the After Effects I/O kit to export the camera and character location data over to After Effects, along with any other important 3D positions that we might want to use in tracking graphics and effects over the top of the 3D footage. Stuff like computer screens and lights. The most important was obviously the animation relating to the characters. We needed some animatable markers for them, something that would let us easily attach the 2D layers directly to those markers in After Effects. It was super important. Easy tracking and compositing was a must. So slap in a locator into Modo, attach a rectangle that represents the character's height. So far, so good. But there needed to be a few extra features. For one, the characters would always need to face the camera, but never tilt towards or away from the camera. That would cause the 2D art to skew unnaturally. So we used a directional constraint, and we disabled the rotation in the x-axis, and it looks nice. In After Effects, the 2D layer will never experience any strange perspective warping. The next challenge came from the frame rate. Our first videos were 12 frames per second across the board, but we knew for this series that we needed the 3D camera to go 24 frames per second in order for it to flow smoothly enough and keep people from throwing up when they watch. But mostly, to save time and costs, we were still going to animate the characters at 12 frames per second, or by twos. That meant that it was important to have the option to make the character position locators pause for every other frame as they traveled along their path, while the camera continued to move smoothly at 24 frames per second. That way, if the character needed to stay visually locked to the floor or some other object, they could do so without sliding motionless across that floor during every other frame. The locator would only advance in 3D space whenever the character animation also advanced one frame. To pull this off, we used the time warp node, and we used this setup to get that pausing to happen. At this point in the process, we'd already chopped up the storyboard into a shot list, and we already also had the finished audio mix with all the voice actors performing their parts. So we imported this audio, and we offset the time depending on which shot we were working on at the moment. For quick reference, we made this note inside the file that showed how much to offset for each shot. So typing in that number before we started work on each scene made it easy to quickly change which scene we were working on and have the audio match. So with the audio and scene setup, it's time to go to work. Blocking out each shot was simple at this stage. We just used a basic camera rig with the camera attached to a locator. It was really convenient to do every shot in the same scene file, so we duplicated the camera along with a corresponding set of character position markers for each scene. We grouped each of those together separately to keep it all organized. Once I was happy with the camera work and the character movement, it was time to export everything to make a rough composite. My favorite way to iterate on 3D footage super quickly and troubleshoot a composite without even needing to touch the render button is to use GL previews. Now, there's a couple of tips that make the GL previews even more useful. Well, first, I try to record the GL preview using a viewport that's already 1920 by 1080, or as close as possible. The easiest way that I found to do that is to drag a separate viewport over to my HD monitor and size it up until it fits perfectly. That way the footage I record is immediately the right size. The next tip is to set up this recording viewport up with a bright green background. And you might have already guessed what this is, where this is going. It allows us to drop a quick color key on the footage in After Effects to get a quick transparent alpha channel. I can't stress enough how helpful it is to be able to have access to a full scene's worth of footage ready in a matter of seconds. Just be aware that you need to go to this temporary folder where the footage is saved to copy it out right away. Modo will just overwrite it if you try to record again. So I keep a shortcut of this folder on my desktop for quick access. If you've never used the After Effects I/O kit in Modo, it really is incredibly good. It's so reliable, it's easy to use, and it didn't give us a single issue throughout the entire production. So just select the camera and any of the locators that you want to transfer, and then add them to the AFX I/O group. Come up to the kit, hit the Export to AE button, give the frame range, and you're all set. Importing is just as easy. Just select the script and the JSX file that you exported from Modo and import. Important note here, I actually dedicated a specific comp in my After Effects file for the purpose of importing these scripts. The reason is that the import process tends to change the comp length and some other things, and that's not necessarily always what I want. So I just copy and paste the camera locators out of that comp and into the scene that they belong in. So add your footage, and now you have a perfect camera and location match inside your footage. We're ready to put all the pieces together. So even though this is a Modo stream, I'm going to keep going in After Effects a little bit to show you how all these assets from Modo work for us in different ways. It's a lot of fun to assemble all the pieces, to see all these scenes coming together. And at the rough stage, we ended up just importing stills of the characters and putting them into the scenes. We just adjust the anchor point, put them in place. I always like to get into the habit of parenting the character art to another locator. It just sort of helps to have an intermediate level of control to kind of get them exactly where they need to be. And then we make all the layers 3D. We hold the shift button while we parent all of these layers together, and that will automatically snap them into position. Do the same thing with the null to snap it to the tracking locator from Modo, and then just scale to resize. Rinse and repeat. And this is even more satisfying when we get to drop the fully animated characters in here and see everything coming together. There are a few more steps to get us to finished quality, but you're getting the general idea of how this goes. The part that we haven't looked at yet is how this 3D footage works as a reference while we're animating the actual characters, and how we make sure that they interact properly with the scene around them. So let's take a look at one particular scene so we can see how this works. This one is a great example because the character is interacting with different layers of the 3D render, and we also see his feet planted on the ground as he jumps and runs out of the frame. The first thing we need to do is to render out this scene so that we can use it as a reference layer in our Toon Boom file, but it'll only be so helpful if we render it out as is. So before we do, we'll take some other important steps. First, since this scene includes characters with their feet on the ground, I'm going to go ahead back to Modo and render out a version of this scene that includes a checkered pattern on the ground. Fun fact, this is actually pretty close to the same method that the Disney animators used on that Beauty and the Beast scene during that kind of ballroom dance that's so famous. You know, anything to make it seem like I'm anywhere close to a Disney animator. The checkered footage is helpful, but to make it even simpler to get the animation dialed in, we're going to bring it into After Effects and create a version of this footage where the space that the character is going to occupy stays locked in the center of the frame. To do that, we're going to create a new comp, and we're going to borrow the camera and the character locator from the previous scene, the regular scene that we've already set up. And then we're going to go to work with a few expressions and scale keyframes in order to come up with our character locked reference. There's this really useful expression in After Effects that allows you to take a 2D null object and have it match the screen space position of a 3D null object. We basically do that for the character position, and then we have this locator. We parent the footage to that new 2D locator, and then we invert the X and Y values on the footage so that the movement is mirrored. And there's a bit more to it than that, but you can see that it's not tough after you get it all set up once. And after that, you end up with this. The character is always in the center of the frame. And now that we have our locked reference, there's one more thing to do. Since we're animating the character on 2s instead of 24 frames per second, I'm going to drop this reference into a 12 frame per second comp, and I'm going to render it out so I can just use it as is in a 12 frame per second Toon Boom file, and all of the timing will match. Nice. Now when I drop this reference into Toon Boom, I can just animate directly on top of the reference, and the grid helps me to ensure that the kid's feet stay planted as the camera moves. I'm still missing a little bit of life in my character animation here, so I also like to shoot some live reference, which is always a blast and never awkward. This did lead to my favorite behind the scenes clip of all time, where my camera may or may not have been hit by a truck.
Mom, I don't know what to do. Carter? Hey, what do you mean?
We live in a cul-de-sac. I thought that it was going to be safe. Anyways, at long last, we have a fully animated character that is perfectly crafted to drop into the scene with a couple of clicks. We dial in his position and boom, he's looking great. And from here, we can make some finishing touches like importing the location of the kitchen light from Modo, adding some glow. We'll even render out a mask from the 3D scene from Modo to get the cone of the light looking even nicer and more accurate. In addition to a few separate renders of the different layers to get the composite to work, we'll also render out a depth map to add some subtle camera blur. We end up using the GL footage, preview footage, all the way up until the end after the client was happy with everything. And then we used the Rebus farm to spit out all of the final render layers we needed super quickly. And there you have it. This video certainly took a lot of work to put together, but the final product is something that we are really pleased with. We really tried to push this technique as far as we could, and there are some other cool solutions that we came up with for some of the other scenes as well. Sections like this one, where the kid and his dad start out in the car, and then transition to floating around in a dark tunnel, and then back into the car, were really challenging to pull off, but very rewarding too. Those seatbelts in this scene, I had to use some interesting methods to get those looking right. In the end, the production process itself went very smoothly. Once we decided on this approach, we didn't really run into any significant technical hurdles. The obvious consensus that me and my wife had at the end of production was that it was a little naive for us to approach this animation without having more help. With the exception of the artists that we hired to help us with the environment models, it fell on me and April to do the rest of the animation work and everything that you see here. We had a great producer, Cameron at Crosstier Media, and he supported us with casting, audio, feedback, client communication, among other things. But if we were going to do this again, we would absolutely be jumping in with a bigger team. In any case, I hope you found this breakdown interesting and helpful. I'm on the Modo Slack, so after the live stream, if you're curious about a part of the process that I didn't cover, or if you're just interested in hearing more about it, hit me up and start a chat. I love to be a part of this community, especially when I actually have time to interact with people. I really appreciate the chance to talk to everyone by way of this live stream. Thanks again, Foundry, for the invite.
All right. Wow. That is a fantastic presentation, Jesse. You can see the reactions in the chat. I think everybody really appreciated the effort you put into that, because I mean that is polished and it's engaging and it's funny. So, I mean, we need to go through from the beginning. Somebody ran over your camera?
Yeah, man. I think he was distracted by seeing me running around out in the street, and he was going pretty slow. But when I turned around and saw him running, kind of slowly driving towards my tripod, I was like, no.
In a cul-de-sac or a court.
Yeah.
There's only one entry and one exit for those.
Sure. Yeah. I think he was just kind of staring at me, and he. It's okay.
You were too distracting, so
it's true.
It was your fault. Okay,
yeah,
sure.
I think my whole neighborhood thinks I'm a little crazy. I think
that's a good. Yeah, judging from what we're seeing there, that's a good kind of crazy. What kind of camera, by the way?
It was actually, I was using my phone at the moment, and
Okay.
and thankfully my phone was okay, but my tripod wasn't, so I had to get some new clamps for my phone, but it was okay.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Yeah. That's at least he didn't, destroy a $5,000 camera. I was kind of afraid to hear, what that would lead to, because that's like we gotta have a talk about
sure.
About this now. Anyway, buddy in the truck who hit your.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, anybody who has any questions, please feel free to chime in here. I've definitely got a couple. I'll pull them down so I can see them a little bit more clearly. So you mentioned your 3D origins with Strata and ended up gravitating towards Modo, but how did you like get involved with 3D to begin with? I find people around our
Yeah.
age range have an interesting story behind that usually.
Yeah. So I was actually working at the Joanne Fabrics headquarters in their marketing department, and I was doing some like production design and stuff. I just gotten out of art school, and it was a great first job, but not super up my alley. Working on like yarn advertisements and knitting instructions, and so at the time they let us kind of do some training in the background on. They gave us some time and kind of like a lynda.com subscription to learn some stuff in the background, and I started picking up more and more 3D stuff. My background is very kind of traditional art training. I did a lot of illustration, a lot of your kind of painting and that kind of thing at school, and so I had a lot of kind of training when it came to the aesthetics. I'd always been interested in getting into animation and 3D modeling, and so I started training a little bit in Maya at that point. I think it was like 2010, 2011, and I ended up seeing through just a really roundabout set of kind of connections. I ended up kind of seeing an opportunity to get into a very young animation program at the publishing company that I was looking at, and it was the kind of position that they didn't really know a lot about animation, and they had a guy working there that was pretty passionate. And since I was doing some like initial training, they weren't too picky about my level of experience, and so they took me in. And it ended up being the perfect job for someone who was really passionate about 3D and animation and wanted to get better at it because. Again, since they didn't know a whole lot, it was very hands off. And whenever we asked them to buy us something or something, they would usually do it. And they let us kind of push the boundaries as far as we wanted. Those early days where we were using Strata, I mentioned kind of pushing the boundaries. We really did try to kind of just do even things in Strata that it really wasn't designed to do, and we were trying to kind of make cool stuff. And the very first video when we switched over to Modo that we made was still one of my favorites. It's I think we briefly showed it. It's that like kind of nerve impulse that's kind of going back through the body. It was for a biology book, and we just when we got Modo, we just had about a million new tools, and it was like we just wanted to do all of it. So we spent a bunch of time training, and I think it's even got like some like dynamic movement on like the stuff we tried to use, the physics simulations and stuff like that. And it was a blast. So really great times. Still look back on the time at the publishing company fondly. It was a really great job. And by the time I got finished there, I think I spent about 9 years. I ended up being pretty seasoned. I think we were really experienced in a lot of different techniques by the time we were done because we were kind of going out of our way to try to grow and do cool stuff. And so I really appreciated that opportunity to do that. And when we started our own company, we kind of thankfully we kind of waited to kind of like leave that job until we had a good set of clients. And we couldn't be more thankful for the set of clients that we have. I mentioned Cameron a couple times in that presentation over at Crosstier Media, and I promise I'll stop rambling in a second. But it is interesting. This video has a lot of very detailed character animation in it. And when we took the first DHS project, we had none of that to show for ourselves. And he gave us the job strictly on the basis of knowing that we kind of like that we'd never let him down before, and that we and that we like try to do the best that we can in every job that he gave us, and we would always kind of hit our deadlines and stuff. And so he took a chance on us, and we did a lot of Toon Boom training, and that was our first kind of set of character animation with that first set of DHS videos. And then this set with the kid with the headphones and everything, we were a bit more experienced, which was good. He had a little bit less risk riding on it for the second time. But we've had a great set of clients that have really put a lot of trust in us, and we really enjoyed kind of leveraging all the skills that we learned at that first job, which has been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. It's kind of It's kind of funny what you're explaining here almost references what you talked about with the animation that you just kind of demoed for us, where you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, I was kind of naive to think that we could do all of these things. When it also sounds like what you're explaining was a sequence of naive decisions. Like, but it's something that I actually like and admire because, I worked on small teams like that really weren't very experienced, but passionate and driven. And we'd all put in, way too much effort, too much time, because we're like, no, we don't really know how to do this, but we're going to get it done. We're going to
Yep.
deliver it on time. And you always do. And it's amazing what you can accomplish because of naivety. It's like you actually innovate because of it. And something actually I've said more than once, and I probably shouldn't say this on a stream, but even with focusing on performance for Modo, kind of a naive decision. I was a new product manager, and it's like, oh, I had no idea what I was in for.
But man,
But
I'm glad you guys are
yeah,
doing it.
exactly. And
Yeah.
the team delivered. They came along and they performed well with it, and are doing a great job and continuing to evolve that right now. But that's why I kind of like, there's a lot of merit to naivety. It's something that leaves an opportunity to exceed expectations and achieve something great. Kind of sounds like
Yeah,
you're doing that.
I agree. It's also amazing how much sleep you can lose by through naive decisions as well.
While you're young, yep. But
Yeah.
many sleepless nights. Yeah, burning yourself out 5 times over. You learn. You hear about burnout when you're young, and you're like, oh, you burn out. And it's like, oh, dude, no, you burn out 5 times. Like there's not one level of burnout. It is many layers that you can go past that you had no idea.
Yeah, we've reached a few of them.
Yeah, I bet you have. No, that is absolutely fantastic. All right, you mentioned you actually like you and your wife work at this company, and
Yes.
like, so what's that background like? So she's the character artist, or
Yeah, she's our art director, and actually,
okay,
um, our current contract, her work is actually the star of the show, and they hired our company not even knowing I existed with the current contract, and then they found out about my work, and we were doing some animation for them too. But yeah, so she actually worked at the same publishing company, which is where we met, and she was one of their head illustrators there, and she also taught some courses at a local college, doing some digital art, digital painting. So she's got a kind of a great track record. I think she's got over a decade of experience just working as an illustrator at a publishing company. And so right off the bat, she was doing art for the animation work that I was taking on. So I started taking on some clients before we quit, like I mentioned, and she was already kind of creating art for that stuff. And so it obviously just kind of made sense. Obviously, if we can kind of offer both the art direction side of it and the animation production side of it, that's immediately, we immediately have a kind of a leg up on a lot of other, just companies and local places who are kind of also doing animation work. We can kind of cover a lot of it in house. And since I tend to be so much of a generalist, it kind of covers a lot of it at once. April is. She's also very interested in learning some basic Modo stuff. She actually went through and I taught her just enough to be dangerous in Modo, where she went through and did a kind of color correction pass on the 3D model, where she went through and changed some of the colors to make it a little bit more cohesive and stuff. And so she's wonderful to have, and we just like any kind of married couple working together, obviously it takes a lot of practice to get that working relationship down. It's started off with a lot of learning curves, and I think we've gotten a lot better at it over the years.
congratulations.
Uh,
So she's the
yeah.
art director. She defined
Yes.
the design of the animation in general and the design of the
Yes.
characters. I really like that 2D look, and that's hard to get
Yep.
right. And also the color palettes, especially the outdoor color palettes, are wonderful.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mentioned a couple times in the presentation that when we were dialing in, when we were trying to use the cell shader, I mentioned that we kept getting a bunch of variation to the lighting when we were moving the camera and stuff. And it's really funny because when you're trying to kind of match your graphics to look to kind of fit alongside vector art. Vector art is obviously not, it's not change, it's very static, the look of it. And so it ended up not working, which was fine. I'm really happy with the technique we ended on, but it was an interesting process to kind of come to that visual
And you
sort of
brought
system.
the
Yep.
technical side of that because I
Yeah.
mean it's all 2D, but with morphs animating between each transformation, essentially, like a head turning is actually a morph
Yep.
between multiple shapes, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, for better or for worse, all the characters are 2D morphs,
You
and
had me fooled though when I first saw your animation. I didn't interpret it that way, and
yeah,
so man, you
man,
guys sound like you're a great. Like it may be tough to work with your partner, but man, it sounds like you guys. There's a reason why you do. You guys
yeah.
clearly work well together.
Anybody looking for some advice in that area? One thing I think a key is very briefly a key thing when you're working with someone who's close to you is when you're exchanging feedback, do it over some sort of messaging system instead of doing it face to face. I think the more
Huh.
the more impersonal you can make your business communication, the better, because it keeps things from feeling more personal than they are, and so that's a good rule of thumb.
That is totally counterintuitive.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's great advice, man, for sure. All right, nice. Okay, so you talked about how you were mocking up the animations in Modo. One thing I love about Modo that maybe more applications do this, but I haven't seen it anywhere else, is the frameable separate cameras. And so, with the GL preview, you can say, from 0 to 120, use camera 1, 120 to 150, camera 2, and so you can, comp together or kind of lay out an animation in Modo.
Yeah.
Did you play around with that at all?
Yeah. So one of the great things about kind of just doing everything, every scene in the same file, was that since we were, and this is not something I really even planned for at the beginning, but when you use the After Effects IO kit to export your kind of locators and your cameras into After Effects, it since we're using the same scene the whole time, it's almost like kind of like a shared system. So I could even, if I imported the location of the light or the screens, for instance, for scene 1, but I also needed those locations for scene 3, I could kind of just copy and paste those same locations, even though it's a completely different scene. They're interchangeable, and it ended up being really convenient just to kind of have that shared scene. It made kind of getting the location data and kind of sharing those locations between scenes so easy. We ended up even at the end, I know I didn't mention it, there's a bedroom. The kid's bedroom shows up in the second video through half of it. We ended up kind of just like building that room as an addendum into the same scene as well, just to kind of take advantage of all the shared cameras and stuff. And so yeah, no, it was very helpful. I can't speak highly enough of just using that GL preview to kind of you take a couple seconds and just kind of like record out a quick
Mhm.
recording of the scene. Just use it in After Effects as a quick means to kind of just get the composite working. So many times I catch like a camera movement that's just kind of like a bit off, and if I was kind of spending a bunch of time rendering these scenes out instead of just using the GL preview recordings, I would be wasting so much time. And so the fact that I can kind of just so quickly, again, and sometimes it's a matter of like 1 or 2 minutes, I can get a whole scene worth
Mhm.
of like 5 different composited layers, kind of like kind of quote unquote rendered out in the GL preview. And if you keep that green background on the end of it, you can kind of quickly drop a key in, get your alpha channel, and you can kind of layer everything so that it belongs. And so yeah, really, really intuitive. I love the way that Modo handles it. Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with other apps and the way that they do it.
Mhm.
But I can't really imagine too much more streamlined of a system to kind of get that stuff so quickly. You know.
Fantastic. Yeah, yeah. I've used a lot from mockups and the camera switching for mockups to hide, like just, when you're trying to pretend you're doing something that you're really not. And I found it
Oh,
very
sure.
useful.
Yeah.
And the advanced viewport, we're seeing a lot more things coming out of the advanced viewport that are being confused for offline renders. It's
Yeah.
amazing how good it looks now. And hopefully we'll be pushing that further this year. I really want to make it so that, that is the default viewport in the future anyhow. All right. Well, man, that was a great presentation. Everybody here really seemed to love it. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the community?
Yeah. Like I mentioned, and at the end of the thing, if you guys, end up taking a look at the videos afterwards, and you have some other questions, I'm happy to. I am always on Slack, and I am again technically a part of the Moto community, and a lot of times it seems like we're a bit too busy to get super involved. But I'd love to chat with anybody who's looking for any additional detail. I know we didn't really cover a lot of the Toon Boom side of it, and it's we kind of briefly covered how we went through a lot of work to get some very specific types of reference rendered out
Mhm.
of Modo. and that's its whole separate process. A lot of it's very technical. there's like a scene in that presentation that pops up where it has like a bunch of colored boxes that says what each of them does, and it went through super quickly, and it was not nearly enough time to understand what was going on. But it was a really great, ended up being a great system at the end to kind of get that. We put so much time into the actual character animation. We wanted it to be really detailed. So we put a lot of work into getting the reference material, that like locked character reference, so that we could kind of like just kind of open up and get the characters to really move around well and stuff. And so I know I didn't really cover a lot of that stuff, but yeah, ended up being really intuitive. When I said at the end that we didn't really run into a lot of technical issues, it's true. I think it really was just kind of like the volume of work. I think if we ended up doing this again, I mentioned getting more help, we'd probably look for people to come in and help do more of the actual character animation. I mentioned to Greg before the stream that we're also very interested in actually, if we did this again, trying out a system where we did the characters in actual 3D as well, which I think would be a great step forward. We love the 2D workflow, and obviously there's a lot of benefits to it. But even kind of doing some of that would be cool too. So figuring out if there's anybody around who has experience in that area, it could be a cool way to expand our network and work with other people in the Modo community too. So we've had a lot of fun with that. But yeah, I can't think of anything else specific if nobody else has any questions.
Mike Jensen actually has one. He said, Jesse, I liked your reference to getting the robot animation in the video. Do you do personal projects in Modo, like short films, or have in the past when you have downtime?
I've done a couple. I have a million ideas for personal projects. We thankfully have been really busy. Yeah. Thankfully since we started the company, we haven't had any shortage of work, which has been nice. But yeah, I did a couple right when right when you guys released Arrays. I think that was what, version 11 or something like that.
Arrays would probably be like 13.
13, yeah. That sounds right. So 13, right when Arrays came out, I did this. I had this like idea that I would sort of get into making some tutorials, which we quickly became too busy to do. Which I would love to do some tutorials and stuff. But right when Arrays came out, we did this at work. We were at the time in a chemistry book, and we were making. I made this using Arrays. I made a procedural kind of DNA rig that would let me just draw a curve, and it would just like generate the DNA, and it was all completely accurate to the proportions of what it should be, and it had a bunch of controls that you could kind of like change the spacing if you wanted to. And I made this like personal project at home where I recreated the rig at home just for practice, and I made this like personal project. I think I posted it in the Slack at some point, but it had like the DNA kind of coming up, and you had like these arrows flowing with Arrays. I was really into Arrays right when they first came out.
They're amazing. Like what you can like, it's still. Yeah. I mean, like you are technical if you were playing around with Arrays.
Oh yeah, dude, it is so great. And we ended up making a bunch of stuff with them, and just the ability to kind of create those procedural kind of just elements, and yeah, no, for sure, I would have loved to make a few tutorials when they came out, but
sure, okay, well, yeah. Also, by you mentioned Slack, that you're always on Slack. I'm always on Slack too, but have you visited the Pixel Fondue Discord at all?
I was just on there briefly before, because I was checking out some of the channels before the stream today, and yeah, I need to. I'm not a big Discord guy, but every once in a while I'll jump on. I should keep that open as well. I do have it open on my desktop.
Yeah, that is really where we want to see the Modo community go, because I mean we've kind of gotten fragmented through the years. Like Slack can be useful, and then there's the actual website, forums, and then there was a separate Modo Discord, or there still is. I think we see the Pixel Fondue Discord as the place to interact in the future. Greg and Arn have done just a phenomenal job organizing that, and has so many capabilities.
Yep. I think I was pretty active on the Modo forums back in the early days in 2012, 13, probably 14 or 15 under Wally B, if that ever gets.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I was very active on those forums. I guess
that's funny.
2007 to like 12, something like that, right before I started working here. Yeah, that was a special time for those forums. It's amazing how. Yeah, that was there at exactly the right time. It's like now I don't think a forum like that would work. just the nature of social media. And that was, I still remember, Brad, people are talking about, I'm trying out this Twitter thing, which sounds like, what, really? It wasn't always a thing at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, like all the social media methods that we use to interact with one another, man,
That's cool.
they didn't exist.
Well, I would love to, speaking of personal projects, I would love to do, I have a tentative idea in my head that's for like a new reel that sort of has a real kind of mechanical element to it where it kind of transitions from scene to scene with all these kind of robotic elements going on. And I think that would be a lot of fun. Our current contract is a couple years long, so we'll be pretty tied up with it for a while. Yeah, it's exciting. It's a lot of fun. Like I mentioned, April, I think, so my work was kind of the star of the show with the DHS videos, and with this current setup of work, April's work is really kind of taking center stage, where they're very illustrative videos, and we're doing a lot of kind of 3D parallax and stuff, which is very fun, very different from this one, which I think we needed a bit of a break, which was good. But maybe once everything quiets down, I can do a bit of my Modo personal work, so that'll be good.
I'd love to see it, and congratulations on getting this done. Phenomenal work.
Yeah,
but
thank you.
Your presentation, again, so professional, so clean, so clear and easy to understand. I think everybody appreciates that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you again so much. And yeah, we'll be talking to you more soon. And next up, we will be taking a look at a few 17.1 previews. So these are, they're alpha previews. They're very, very early, but I want to show you a few of the things that you're going to be seeing. And so I'm trying to just talk to produce some filler until we get these videos up. But this first one right here is selection improvements. So if we go ahead and play this back, this is a lasso selection, right? And we're now using a new hit testing library. So, Modo casts rays when it selects something, especially with a lasso selection. And especially with lasso selections, it can be kind of slow. You'll notice this is going on for a long time. This is 17.0 before the new hit testing change. And I believe it was 18 seconds it took to select those polygons. That was, I think, a 250,000 poly sphere. And now, if we do it in the new hit testing build, you're going to see that 7 seconds. And so, from 18 seconds down, or I think it was 4, actually. Yeah, it's 4 seconds, excuse me, because it's over a 4-fold improvement is what we saw. And then also paint selection improvements, right? And so painting on a mesh is different. And this one's a hard one to show performance comparisons with. And so we'll just kind of paint over a surface and we can take a look at the difference in FPS. And all right, so we'll zoom on out here and kind of paint, or, getting kind of pre-highlighting, which is the same thing, right? And that's actually selecting. You can see how much faster it is with paint selecting or paint pre-highlighting in the more recent version that will be 17.1, which is extremely impressive, and a whole lot of geometry in this scene just to abuse it. And these are, new enhancements from Taz. Taz doing amazing Taz things as he usually does. And we've shown you the improvements, incremental updates, and view objects. Those are both continuing forward with 17.1, but these are some of the other areas of performance that we're working on. And really, when we tell you that we're working on performance, we're working on individual little things, and those individual little things over time add up. And so after seeing what we accomplished for 17.0 and what we got on the slate for 17.1, we are I'm personally excited to playing with Modo over the holiday break at the end of this year, because it's just going to be a totally different application and it's going to continue to evolve in that way. So really love seeing those hit testing improvements. So let's take a look at the next video if we can, Nicole. And which one is this? This is slide tool performance. So we added incremental updates to the slide tool. The slide tool is one of my favorite tools. And you can see here that I'm getting really 4 to 7 frames per second, 5 frames per second. It's a 200,000 polygon sphere, raw polys, not sub-Ds. And yeah, now switch on over to 17.1 or the pre-alpha version of it. Jumped up to 140. Kind of crazy improvement in performance there. And so we still have plenty of tools. We need to add incremental updates too. This is a particularly challenging one. Another great enhancement from Taz. So can't wait until we just keep on getting through more and more of these things. And next video, Nicole. So the next one is slide tool workflow. So as we're playing around with performance on a tool, we decided, you know what, we should look at the workflow of that tool at the same time and then not come back to it for a very long time. So I wanted to improve the workflow for the slide tool, which is use it for more things, add an offset handle, pre-highlight the topology that you're going to be working with, eliminate the face mode, actually make face mode always active. And so much more interactive and natural tool. And I did the design for this one, but I'm telling you that because the engineer who worked on it, Remy, changed the design. So I said, I wanted to do this, 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 and this. And he's like, that's cool. But I think if you did this at the end, it would be even better. And it kind of led towards this face mode. That lets you kind of get a preview of what the topology would look like and allows for the real interactivity. So our engineers do some design work, and I want to make sure I give Remy some praise for that. And so this is a much more flexible tool that now you can switch between face mode and edge mode and vertex sliding in a much more natural way. And you also have an offset handle. We want to basically consolidate more tools into single tools that do more things, and I'm going to do that for a lot of different reasons. But essentially, like, I would almost use the slide tool for push moving forward, right? Because that handle is there and it's available. And we also just recently, as of today, added a handle for the edge mode or the radial mode when you're in edge component mode, and context sensitivity decides which modes it should be in for you. And so there'll actually be a handle that makes sense. The current handle for radial slide does not make any sense. So some nice enhancements to the slide tool, I think. All right, and next video, Nicole. And this one, all right, let me contextualize this. I wasn't sure if I was going to show this to you because it's very early alpha. It is weight painting. There is a lot of things that still need to be done for weight painting. And when we talk about improving performance for something like weight painting, that's actually a big area. There's a lot of different things that contribute to weight painting. There's brushes and, and things of that sort, all that are individual things going on. And so here we are taking a look at the difference between weight painting in 16 and 17, and dramatic. The difference is totally dramatic. There are things that we need to do as far as updating the mesh more quickly. And the engineer working on this, Milos, who is doing phenomenal work, he's got all sorts of great ideas on how to continue, improving various aspects of it. But this initial display of the potential performance difference, I think, is extremely encouraging because there's a lot more room for us to do a lot more things. And I know how much Modo users care about weight painting performance, and I really care about how this affects other areas too. So I wanted to share that with you. A lot more work for us to do on that, but we were hoping to have that in 17.1. So we are hard at work. We are very much looking forward to getting that out into public alpha and public beta. It'll be a little bit still, but I think we're making some really great progress. So want everyone to have a wonderful Alien Day. Make sure you go check out your local theater that is hosting Alien and appreciate one of the greatest postmodernist films of our era. Yes, it is a postmodernist film. If you want to talk about that, we can talk about that on Discord sometime in the future. But have a great weekend, and we will talk to you guys soon. The next presentation will be from Rue McNeil, a very talented VFX artist and game artist, and he's going to show us the amazing ways he uses Modo. Have a great one. Talk to you guys soon.